Pardon.
We are talking Vermines, also known as Infested, which is the Western name for this French creature feature. And this is a first-time director's movie whose name I'm not going to butcher here, and is a killer spider movie with a little bit of social commentary. Let me give you the plot synopsis. It focuses on this kind of high-rise in a lower income area of France, shall we say, and this particular kind of high-rise tends to have people from an ethnic minority in there. And one of these residents is this guy who is kind of scratching out a living, trying to kind of sell bits and pieces, mainly kind of trainers, and he kind of goes to this basically guy who's getting in these kind of off the back of a lorry kind of trainers, and he notices this guy's also got a variety of illegally imported animals, and this young man is also interested in that, so he ends up buying this kind of spider, which we see at the prologue is kind of from the Middle East somewhere. He inevitably brings this spider back to this apartment, which gets loose and ends up kind of reproducing and having this whole kind of apartment building infested with killer spiders. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. So this is an interesting movie because the tone of the movie, to me, changes quite dramatically in the film as it goes on. When it starts out, the movie is taken pretty seriously, and the setup for this film, you know, it's almost like these people from an impoverished background that are sort of shunned by society, you know, maybe even kind of referred to as vermin by certain kind of, you know, people like the police or something like that. That's the kind of the social commentary aspect here. So these people sort of are left to fend for themselves and are sort of shunned by others, you might say. So that's the kind of the metaphor here, so to speak. And it's a very much like a gritty, you know, socially conscious drama style of movie in the beginning. But we have this kind of killer spider element in it. But as it goes through the film, and I would say probably just over the halfway mark, it ends up becoming more schlocky, but still having the same characters from that kind of grittier, grounded kind of start of the movie, really. But the actual kind of the story and the kind of the threat gets so much more schlocky and silly, over the top, as the film goes on. So it's an odd movie in tone, and I have mixed feelings about it. Let me go into what I did like. This is a film for me. I think if you are a person who is afraid of spiders, you have arachnophobia and stuff, this is probably going to be the scariest movie, I would say, out of all of the spider films. This one, I think, is probably going to be the one that you're going to want to watch the least, because it really, I think, demonstrates the fear that people have of spiders. Initially, the spider attacks are quite realistic because the spiders are small, fast, and the kind of the bites look painful and result in, you know, a slow, agonising death. Not that slow; it still moves pretty quick, but not instant, if that makes sense. But the way these kind of spiders are filmed, it looks horrifying. I mean, these things look super kind of realistic. I'm not sure if they've used real spiders or what they've done, or if it's CGI. However they've done it, the spiders look realistic. Maybe not so much the very end of the movie, but certainly the first 2/3 of this film. The spiders look super kind of realistic. and they act like spiders darting around. And it's that kind of, you know, we have the girl screaming in the bathroom because there's a spider on the floor, and she, you know, she wants to get her boyfriend to come in. So it's scenes that you've seen in everyday life, but this has a much more of a kind of a deadlier twist to it. The other thing I think that really kind of hammers home the fear here is the movie is fairly kind of dramatically kind of played, for at least for the most part, in the first kind of act of the story, the first half of the movie probably. The acting is solid because we have this impoverished society. You know, you feel like this movie has these dramatic chops, that it's trying to demonstrate how these people are living, and they're kind of shunned by society. So you have that kind of, that dramatic feel, that sort of Oscar baity type feel in some aspects, because it's showing you the life that these people live and what they are having to do to survive. And that realistic depiction of characters. This is not a cheesy movie with you know, the typical stock characters and things like that. It plays it pretty straight with realistic characters, a gritty and downtrodden society of people, and then you have these spiders that are there, which are imagined so well. Really, I think gives you the chills. And I'm not particularly afraid of spiders, I have to say, but even I was like, whoa, this is like, I can really see people who are afraid of spiders really kind of thinking, do you know what, I watched that arachnophobia movie with Julian Sands, but this one is really freaking me out. So, you know, props to the filmmakers here and everyone behind it, because I think they have really tapped into that fear of spiders that so many people have, and played it in such a way that it becomes so apparent, and with these kind of realistic characters, this kind of setting, this downtrodden sort of setting, I think really amplifies it as well. So it's really interesting. And then the latter half of the movie, certainly the latter act, the last act, it's proper schlock, and some people might really like that over the topness. I suppose it gives the film some variety, because we go from, you know, spiders that are realistic looking and realistic size to effectively giant spiders, and lots of them, and it's horrifying in different ways, and the adventure is more a B-movie-esque kind of style film, so it has that kind of change of tone, which makes it an interesting movie in some ways. And I think it does in some aspects still have the dramatic chops from the characters. It's just the movie around it has changed. So I found it interesting, but even those effects I think are still solid, and there is still that tension, that's the social tension, particularly when we have scenes with the police towards the end of the movie. So I think if you don't mind the tone here being a little bit fluid, I think you can enjoy this for a kind of monster movie. I actually think you can kind of somewhat ignore the social commentary, to be honest with you, and just enjoy it for a kind of a horror movie. I think, even though that is obviously quite a big part of the film, I feel it's just in the background for the most part, and you can just enjoy these characters interacting with the you know, with the spiders and stuff. So those of you who don't like, you know, a message movie hammered home, even though it's quite clearly has that in there, I feel it's done in a way where you don't feel like you're being preached to, at the very least, you know. So yeah, good acting, familiar story, but still a good one. Great effects, great building of the kind of the tension, the you know, the atmosphere, and this ever increasing threat with these spiders. It really ramps up that kind of that danger level. But let me talk about what I think does not work. As the film goes on, I personally feel this film got dumber. And it's weird considering how grounded it starts off as. Now, it gets dumber in a couple of ways. So, first of all, the spiders themselves. Now, we start off with one spider. Bear this in mind. And then by the end of this movie, we have an apartment, and this takes place maybe over a few days, 3 days, 4 days max. We have an apartment building which seems to be fully infested, top to bottom, with now giant spiders and thousands of them. I mean, the fact that we have these kind of giant spiders, and it's just, I mean, they're like unrealistically big, you know, a lot of them. And there's so many of them so quickly that have grown to that size, and there's no like supernatural element, there's no like these are radioactive spiders or anything like that. It ends up being schlocky. Personally, I would have preferred they had kept it a little bit more grounded, because I was thinking, why? You know, why is this happening? It doesn't really make any sense. I don't feel the movie has established that these things are superhuman, or not even superhuman, super spiders. That was a bit weird. And there is just some like sillier things that happen in the film. Now, one of the big things here is going to be how the outside are reacting to these individuals in this apartment block. Now, I'm not going to go into too much specifics here, but the idea being is that obviously the outside, the police, the authorities see these people as vermin themselves, so they are kind of you know, just happy to kind of let them die. And I just don't know. I mean, that seemed a little far-fetched to me. I just can't see that happening in a developed country. It just seems a little bit too far-fetched. The movie actually ends up playing like the movie .Wreck, because the authorities are treating these people like they're zombie-infected people who are going to spread a virus, and I just didn't really make sense to me. And then, you know, we have these police like having a shootout with spiders. And I'm thinking, surely they would bring sort of chemicals or a flamethrower, but they're lining up with guns and firing at them. And I was like, this is now proper silly territory. And we have this. There's a few like interactions with different characters and police, and I was just thinking, it's really different from the kind of the more grounded sort of story that this movie started as. The performances are still good. The acting, I think, is consistent, and the characters are consistent, but the story around it just seems to go loopy. And there's various little kind of elements here that don't seem to make sense. This building doesn't seem to have fire exits, for example. There's instances where we have all these kind of webs over the walls, and then we see them all, like some people put their hoods up, but some people don't. And like, why wouldn't you do that? There's a variety of kind of things like, you know, these spiders are kind of nocturnal and they're afraid of light, like vampires. I mean, they don't explode, but the light will kind of make them run away and things. But people aren't like picking up like cans of hairspray and spraying them, and that doesn't happen. So there's lots of kind of like little things in this film that I just felt were, certainly in that second half, were just kind of B-movie. Now, I don't mind a B-movie. And I can enjoy a film on a B-movie level, but the thing that gets me with this film is that it didn't start out like that. It was very much a kind of, so you know, it's exaggerated, of course, but you know, we are led to believe this one spider has reproduced this amount of time and blah blah blah. But you know, you can kind of have a little bit of disbelief, but it goes so far. It kind of clashed with the dramatic side of it, and I personally would have preferred had they dialed back a little bit and kept it a little bit more grounded, because it ended up being just what started out being a very tense and realistic spider horror film to a schlocky B movie, but with still great effects and good acting. And I think it needed to be one tone or the other, because I don't think it suited it having this kind of shift. So you know, couple that with a bunch of kind of logic problems and kind of inconsistencies with what that people I think would do. I don't know. It seemed like such a good movie to start with, and it just lost it. I still think it's an enjoyable movie overall. I actually, you know, enjoyed this movie from start to finish. But it's, as the film goes on, as I said, I think this movie got dumber. I would still say it's an above average movie because the horror elements, and if you just want to watch it for that and you don't mind a clash of kind of tone, you'll love it. And this movie genuinely, I think, is probably one of the scariest spider films put to screen. Certainly the first half of the spider attacks. The second half, they get a bit too schlocky, I personally think. But I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's a solid movie. Had it maintained the kind of the momentum I think it built up in that, maybe even the first 2 acts, I think it really would have been a great film. But it's a good film. 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.